The sun had barely crept over the hills of Silicon Valley, casting a warm glow on the bustling streets below. It was a Tuesday morning like any other, except for one small detail, a detail that would quickly spiral into something unimaginable. Inside a trendy café that prided itself on its welcoming atmosphere, a barista named Ava was preparing for her usual shift. But today, something would happen that would alter the course of her life forever. As she set up the espresso machine and wiped down the counters, her eyes fell on a familiar face entering the café, one that she never expected to see in a place like this. Elon Musk. The man who seemed to occupy the headlines of every major news outlet. The tech mogul, the visionary, the billionaire. He strode into the café with an air of calm confidence, his presence commanding the attention of everyone around him. But there was something different about him today. A red cap sat atop his head, its bright white letters unmistakable, "Make America Great Again." Ava froze for a moment. She'd seen that hat before. She'd heard the stories. She knew exactly what it stood for. And in that instant, her pulse quickened, a mix of shock and disbelief coursing through her veins. Ava wasn't just a barista. She was passionate about her values. She'd always prided herself on fostering an inclusive environment at her café, where everyone, regardless of background, beliefs, or political affiliations, was treated with respect. But this felt like a direct challenge to everything she stood for. She had never imagined that someone as polarizing as Elon Musk would walk into her world, let alone wear a symbol so strongly associated with division and controversy. Her thoughts raced. Was it possible? Could she really do this? Could she ban him from her café? The moment passed quickly, but the decision was already made. Ava walked towards the table where Elon sat, his eyes focused on his phone. She felt her heart pounding in her chest. A wave of uncertainty crashed over her, but she knew there was no turning back. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up for her customers, her friends, and her beliefs. She cleared her throat and spoke, her voice firm but shaking. "I'm sorry, but you're going to have to leave. I can't allow that hat in here." Elon looked up, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. But it wasn't a smile of amusement, it was the kind of smile that sent chills down her spine. "Is that so?" he asked, his voice calm yet laden with a quiet challenge. "And who exactly are you to make that call?" Ava, caught off guard by his cool demeanor, struggled to maintain her composure. She had expected a confrontation, but not like this. What happened next would change everything for Ava. For this was no ordinary customer. This was Elon Musk. And in the most unexpected twist of fate, Ava was about to learn a shocking truth, one that would leave her questioning her every decision and the world she thought she knew. A truth that would turn her seemingly righteous stand into an entirely different kind of confrontation. The café she worked at wasn't just a random business, it was his café. And he wasn't about to let her forget that. Ava stood there, staring at Elon Musk with a sense of growing tension in the air. Her hand was still hovering in the air, almost as if she were unsure whether to retract her words or stand firm. She couldn't believe what she had just done. Had she really just asked Elon Musk to leave her café over a MAGA hat? The air felt heavy, suffocating even. The hum of the espresso machine seemed far away now, almost like background noise to the battle of wills that had just unfolded. Elon didn't flinch. He didn't get angry. In fact, he didn't even seem the slightest bit bothered. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying her with an almost playful look on his face. "You know," he said, "I've been banned from worse places. But this is something new." His voice was smooth, almost as if he were discussing the weather rather than a confrontation over something so deeply controversial. Ava's stomach turned. She had expected him to argue or lash out. What she hadn't anticipated was this unshakable calm. It was unsettling. She took a step back, looking around at the other customers. Some were watching the exchange with interest, their eyes wide as they whispered to each other. A few were trying to hide their smiles. Others seemed on edge, unsure of which side to take. The café had always been a place of comfort, of unity, but now it felt as if it were about to split down the middle. Ava had never thought that one small decision could have such a far-reaching impact. "You're really going to kick me out over this?" Elon asked, his tone now tinged with a subtle mockery. "What happened to all the talk about inclusivity and open-mindedness? That's what your café is famous for, right?" His words struck like a sharp blow, aimed straight at the very heart of her convictions. He was right, in a sense. Ava had spent years curating a space that was open to everyone. But this felt different. Ava's voice trembled, but she managed to keep her composure. "This isn't about being open-minded," she said, her words gaining strength with each passing second. "This is about standing up for what's right. That hat, it symbolizes hate and division. It's not something I can support, not in my cafe. Her hands were clenched into fists now, though she tried to hide the shaking. She felt the eyes of the room on her, the weight of their judgment pushing down on her. Would they agree with her? Or would they side with the man who had built his empire on innovation and disruption? Elon raised an eyebrow, as if amused by her impassioned speech. Hate, he repeated, a laugh escaping him. You're telling me that a hat, just a hat, is a symbol of hate? Do you even understand the context? Do you know what that hat means to people? Or are you just going to paint it with the broad brush of your own biases? He stood up now, moving toward her with deliberate slowness. His eyes never left hers. I'm sure you think you're doing the right thing, but you're missing the bigger picture. The intensity of his gaze made Ava's heart race. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, her mind struggling to keep up with his words. Was she wrong? Was she being too quick to judge? She had read about the controversies surrounding the MAGA movement, the division it had created in the country. But had she truly understood it in its entirety? The question gnawed at her, eating away at her resolve. Before she could respond, a voice from behind her broke into the tension. Ava, what's going on here? It was Nate, her manager. He had been in the back of the cafe, but had come out to investigate the escalating confrontation. He looked from Ava to Elon, confusion written across his face. Ava opened her mouth to explain, but before she could, Elon spoke again, this time in a more casual tone. Oh, it's simple, he said, his eyes flicking over to Nate. Your barista here seems to have a problem with the hat I'm wearing. She wants to ban me from her cafe. Nate blinked, surprised. What? He looked at Ava. Is this true? You're kicking out Elon Musk. His voice was incredulous, almost as if he didn't believe what he was hearing. Ava nodded, though doubt was beginning to creep into her expression. She had been so sure of her decision moments ago, but now, with Nate's confusion and Elon's calm demeanor, she felt herself faltering. Elon smiled again, a little more widely this time. See, that's the thing, he said, turning back to her. You're not just kicking out some random guy, you're kicking out someone who has a say in what happens to this cafe. Ava's eyes widened in disbelief. What do you mean by that? She asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. She had heard rumors of business dealings, of people buying cafes as a front for something bigger, but she hadn't believed them. And yet, here was Elon Musk, standing before her, revealing that he was more than just a customer. Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean, he replied with a smirk. This cafe. It's mine. The words hit her like a thunderclap. Her stomach dropped. She couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin. What do you mean? She stammered, her voice shaking. This cafe. You own it. Elon nodded, his expression unreadable. That's right. I own this cafe. And I'm afraid your little crusade against my hat is going to cost you your job, Ava. The revelation hit like a punch to the gut. Ava's world, which had been so certain just moments ago, now seemed completely upside down. She was standing in front of the very man whose ideology she had worked so hard to distance herself from. And now, she realized, her fate was in his hands. Ava stood frozen, her mind struggling to make sense of Elon's words. You own this cafe, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. She could hardly believe it, but the way he spoke, with the calm assurance of someone who was used to getting what he wanted, made it all too real. The cafe that she had poured her heart and soul into, the place she had worked at for years, was now owned by the very man she had just asked to leave. Elon's smile remained fixed, though there was a subtle gleam in his eyes. He watched her, almost studying her reaction. It was as if he were savoring the moment, the power, the control he had over her, over this situation. Yes, Ava, he said, his voice smooth and unyielding. I own this cafe. I've owned it for a while now. But don't worry, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just here for my coffee. He gestured toward the counter, where the barista behind it stood in awkward silence, clearly unsure of how to react. Ava's head was spinning. She had always known there were powerful people who ran businesses behind the scenes, but she had never imagined that she would find herself in this situation. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under her, and she was falling. She had been so sure of herself, so convinced that she was doing the right thing by standing up for her values. And now, she was faced with a reality that was far more complicated than she had ever anticipated. She glanced around the cafe, her gaze landing on the other customers. Some were still watching, but others had turned their attention back to their laptops or their conversations, seemingly indifferent to the drama unfolding before them. Ava couldn't help but feel like an outsider in her own space. Her cafe, her sanctuary, was no longer her own. It belonged to someone else. Someone who didn't seem to share her values or care about her beliefs. Someone who could ruin everything with a simple word. "You really think you can just kick me out?" Elon asked again, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "You think because you don't like my hat, you get to make decisions for everyone in here?" He took a step closer, his gaze intense now, his words laced with an almost mocking tone. "This cafe isn't just yours, Ava. It never was." Ava's chest tightened. She felt her back stiffen, a wave of indignation pushing through the fear that had gripped her. I thought it was about creating a safe space," she said, her voice shaky but defiant. "A place where people could come together, regardless of what they believe in. But when you walk in here with that hat, you're not just expressing a political view, you're making a statement. A statement that excludes people. A statement that tells people like me, people who don't agree with that message, that we don't belong." Her words were coming faster now, her breath quicker. She wasn't just speaking to Elon anymore. She was speaking to herself, trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Elon's expression softened for a fraction of a second, but it was fleeting. "Look, I get it," he said, his voice dropping a notch, almost as if he were speaking to her as an equal for the first time. "You don't like my hat. You don't like what it stands for. I understand that." He paused, allowing the words to hang in the air. "But here's the thing, Ava. I don't care. I don't care what you think about my hat, or my politics. I don't care what anyone thinks, actually. What I care about is that I own this cafe, and that you're making a scene. A scene that's going to affect my bottom line. You can't just throw people out because of their personal beliefs. That's not how business works." His voice was firm now, the softness replaced by a steely edge. Ava felt the weight of his words, but she didn't back down. "Maybe that's what's wrong," she said, her voice steady now, even if her heart was still pounding. "Maybe you think this is just business. But this isn't just about money. This is about values. And you can't put a price on that." She locked eyes with him, unflinching. "You can own the cafe. But you can't own the heart of it. That belongs to the people who come here every day, who believe in something better." Elon seemed to consider this for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, just as quickly as the tension had escalated, it seemed to dissipate. He gave a slight shrug, almost as if the confrontation had been nothing more than a passing distraction. "I admire your passion, Ava. But in the end, this is just business. And business isn't about feelings, it's about numbers. And I'm afraid your feelings are going to cost you your job." Ava's heart dropped again. She knew what he was implying. She knew that, as the owner, Elon had the power to fire her in an instant. But she wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. She had always believed in doing the right thing, no matter the cost. "You can't buy integrity," she said quietly, her words carrying more weight than she had intended. Elon's eyes flickered with something. Was it respect? It was hard to say. But then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the counter, as though nothing had happened. Ava watched him, feeling the sting of defeat wash over her. She had stood her ground, but now it felt like everything was slipping through her fingers. Nate, her manager, approached her slowly. "Ava, are you okay?" he asked quietly, concern in his voice. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she watched Elon, who was now waiting for his coffee, as if nothing had changed. And in a way, nothing had. Not really. He was still Elon Musk. And she was still just Ava, a barista who had dared to stand up to him. But in that moment, something had shifted within her. She wasn't defeated. She wasn't broken. She had fought for what she believed in, even if it hadn't led to the outcome she had hoped for. And she knew that, in the end, that was something worth holding on to. In the quiet aftermath, as Ava stood there watching Elon Musk sip his coffee, something profound stirred inside her. The bitter sting of defeat still lingered, but in its place, there was a quiet resolve, a new understanding of the complex intersection between values, power, and resilience. Ava had fought for what she believed in, not for herself, but for everyone who had walked through those doors seeking refuge from the chaos of the world. She had dared to confront the powerful, and while she didn't win this time, she had taken a stand that would resonate far beyond this cafe. She had chosen to face an uncomfortable truth. Standing up for values often comes at a cost. But that cost was not the end of the story. It was merely a chapter in a larger narrative. The story of resilience, of unyielding spirit in the face of adversity. Ava looked around the cafe again. The same faces, the same quiet hum of conversation, the clinking of cups and laughter. Life continued, as it always does, regardless of the dramas that unfold. And in that moment, Ava realized something she hadn't fully understood before. She wasn't alone. There were others who shared her vision, her values. They might not always be visible, but they were there, in the way they greeted each other, in the quiet solidarity that existed beneath the surface of their interactions. She was no longer just a barista. She was a voice for something greater. Her actions, her unwavering belief that values mattered, had made an impact. Even if it didn't change Elon Musk's mind, it had changed something in her. It had ignited a spark of self-belief, a confidence that she could navigate this world of power and politics without compromising who she was. Nate came over again, this time with a subtle smile. "You okay?" he asked, the concern still evident in his voice, but now there was something else, respect. She nodded, meeting his gaze. "Yeah, I'm okay." She knew it wasn't just about this cafe, or even the confrontation with Elon Musk. It was about something deeper, something that would carry her forward into whatever came next. As the cafe hummed with the sounds of another day in motion, Ava felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. Her job, her cafe, even Elon's presence, it all faded into the background as she realized the truest currency in this world wasn't money, it wasn't power, it was integrity, it was standing for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against you. She had awakened something inside herself. A determination to continue standing up for what she believed in, no matter who came through those doors. The world would keep testing her, keep pushing her limits. But Ava knew one thing for sure. No matter what, she would always choose the high road. Because in the end, values are worth more than anything else. They shape who we are, and they guide us through the storms of life. The cafe might not belong to her anymore, but the heart of it, the spirit of community, kindness, and understanding, would always remain. And that, she knew, was something no one could ever take away. The sun had set outside, casting a warm glow through the cafe windows. Ava took a deep breath, a feeling of quiet strength washing over her. With every challenge, she would rise. And with every rise, she would be more determined to make the world a better place. For herself, and for all those who still believed in the power of values, kindness, and integrity.